That strategy has paid off. Temu amassed more users in 6 months than Shein has in 8 years.
Welcome to the new era of consumption, where the thrill of buying has become an end in itself. Today, we're not just purchasing products, we're consuming experiences, chasing fleeting dopamine hits, and navigating a marketplace where the lines between reality and simulation have blurred. This is the world of Temu, a platform that marks a profound and unsettling shift in how we interact with consumer goods. But this shift is not just economic or technological, it's deeply philosophical. Temu isn't just another e-commerce site. It's our time's best e-commerce site yet that has achieved something its competitors are aspiring to. A highly engineered environment designed to tap into our primal desires for instant gratification. And while there are plenty of reasons to critique Temu, its environmental impact, questionable labor practices, and concerns about data privacy, the real problem is much deeper. Viewed through the lens of philosopher Jean Baudrillard's concept of simulacra and hyper-reality, Temu reveals a new disturbing form of consumption. It's not just about cheap goods or addictive experiences. Temu has created a hollow, simplified reality where symbols have lost all meaning. Pricing makes no sense, and consumer desires are manipulated through gamified, primitive means. And I believe as a result, this has ushered in a new hyper-reality for us to navigate, where we not only have lost touch with reality, but with meaning itself. Let me explain. In the 20th century, Jean Baudrillard argued that consumerism was less about the practical use of objects and more about the meanings that they conveyed, a concept he explored in The System of Objects. He suggested that products communicate social status, identity, and aspirations, with each item acting as a part of a symbolic code. This insight, which was radical for its time, became a cornerstone of postmodern thought on consumer culture. But it's what we would consider common knowledge today. Debord expanded on these ideas in The Society of the Spectacle, introducing the spectacle as a concept that described how modern life had become dominated by images and representations. According to Debord, these images mediated human relationships, turning people into passive consumers of symbols rather than active participants in reality. The spectacle wasn't just about advertising. It was a tool of social control that kept people focused on consuming lifestyles and narratives while distracting them from critically engaging with the underlying capitalist power structures. Baudrillard and Debord both argued that advertising no longer just sold products, but myths and ideas that shaped how people saw themselves. For instance, buying a luxury car or a Chanel handbag wasn't just a purchase. It symbolized success and social status. And this shift created a world where symbols and images became more real at some point than the original concepts that they represented, what Baudrillard called hyper-reality. In hyper-reality, people chase simulations of wealth, beauty, and success, losing sight of authentic experiences because the signs have become more the real than reality itself. Think the movie The Matrix. Both thinkers were issuing warnings. Baudrillard's hyper-reality and Debord's spectacle described a world where meaning, truth, and genuine human reactions were eroded. The result was a fragmented existence where individuals became disconnected from reality and from their true selves, living in a world defined by artificial experiences and commodified identities. And these works were written in 1968 and 67, respectively, yet they seem eerily prescient when viewed through the lens of today's society. The warnings Baudrillard and Debord issues about the harrowing consequences of unchecked consumerism and media saturation have largely come to pass. The rise of social media, a 24-hour news cycle, and targeted advertising has accelerated the process of turning reality into a spectacle and deepened the dominance of hyper-reality. Today, many people live more through their screens, curating and consuming images of themselves and others, rather than engaging with the world in a meaningful, unmediated way. Things like Temu and AI-generated art, I think, push the boundaries of Baudrillard's concept of simulacra, creating what can be seen as a simulation of simulations. If characters like SpongeBob represent a stage 4 simulacrum in Baudrillard's model, hyperreal entities completely detached from any real reality and who we believe to represent reality better than reality itself, then the product sold on Temu that imitates SpongeBob or AI-generated attempts to replicate him take this to an even more unsettling level. These imitations mimic a hyperreal creation or sign, making them feel almost hollow or uncanny, triggering the discomfort of the uncanny valley effect. And this might be the closest we've come to a 5th stage simulacrum, where what we're witnessing are replicas of a replica, removed even further from any grounding in reality. At this stage, the products no longer serve as a symbol of anything meaningful. It only hints at being a symbol. Take Temu's slogan, for example, "Shop like a billionaire." The absurdity is striking, because when you buy a $10 fridge from what on every level looks like a bargain bin website, you're not shopping like a billionaire, and nor is the experience wrapped in any luxury or exclusivity, unlike high-end retailers that would, for example, create an atmosphere of status and privilege. Temu makes no attempt to hide its cheapness. The site's design, the relentless discounts, the overwhelming flood of just deals evoke a chaotic clearance sale, if anything, not the elegance and allure of wealth. Yet the slogan dangles this sort of superficial symbol of wealth in front of you, a diluted echo of what consumerism used to represent. While the marketing suggests engagement with wealth, what's really happening is the offering of a shadow or hollowed out version of past consumer symbols. The symbols themselves haven't disappeared, but they've lost their power, so to say. It's no longer about fooling the consumer into feeling wealthy by buying something luxurious. Instead, it's about cycling through fast, disposable goods that barely attempt to convey any symbolic value at all. The signs are faint and unclear and no longer convince you of anything, yet people still buy them. And this marks, I think, the further erosion of meaning in consumer culture, where we aren't even interacting with the signs of wealth and status anymore, but with flimsy imitations of those signs, where the illusion is so transparent it's almost besides the point. And perhaps that is exactly the point. The user interface of Temu and similar platforms mirror a frenetic energy of gambling websites, with deals flashing constantly, vibrant and playful graphics, and the sense that everything is happening too quickly to second guess. It taps into this new hyper-accelerated way of consuming that's reminiscent of TikTok, a never-ending stream of dopamine hits. But unlike traditional consumerism, which once evoked the seduction of carefully crafted ads and narratives, Temu bypasses all of that. Consumption on that platform feels a lot more primitive and immediate. On Temu, you're not drawn in by the allure of status or identity tied to products that they're selling. Instead, you're bombarded by colors, rapid deals, and sensory overload. There's no subtlety, no attempt to create a sense of luxury or exclusivity. The psychology is quite simple. Trigger a response, flash a deal, create urgency, make it visually irresistible. In this new model, there's no need to craft a narrative or connect the product to some higher aspiration. The consumption process has been stripped down to its most basic form, the pure visual stimulation and impulse. And this shift is disturbing because it reduces the act of shopping to something almost animalistic. Where traditional advertising seduced consumers through emotions, aspirations, and desires, Temu overwhelms into submission. It's no longer about convincing you that a product will enhance your life or fulfill your needs. It's about hitting you with enough stimuli that fast enough so you act before you've even processed why. And the experience feels less like shopping and more like a conditioned response, where the brain's reward center is triggered repeatedly and creates a feedback loop of consumption for the sake of consumption. This shift marks a new phase in consumerism, where the act of buying isn't about identity, status, or even the object itself. Instead, it's about satisfying a primitive urge: click, buy, and move on. It's consumption for its own sake, driven not only by desire, but by sheer sensory overload. And this is what makes it all the more dangerous, because people are no longer even conscious participants in the process. They're passive recipients of stimuli, reacting impulsively rather than thoughtfully. In this world, products no longer need to symbolize anything. They only need to be flashy enough, quick enough to capture your attention for just long enough to make a purchase. Even pricing on Temu contributes to this distorted reality, where traditional economic logic is just broken down. Prices on Temu are absurdly low, and they're dynamic, constantly fluctuating, further amplifying the confusion. You're left questioning how a product can be offered at such a low cost. The pricing has no apparent connection to the labor involved, the materials used, or the actual value of the item. It's not a reflection of the real production cost, but rather another piece of a hyper-real puzzle designed to convince you that you're getting an incredible deal while severing any meaningful connection between price and value. This pricing strategy mirrors the artificiality of the entire experience. Like the flashy graphics and constant deals, the irrational pricing serves to overwhelm and not to inform. It creates a false sense of urgency and excitement, making you feel as though you've stumbled upon something that's too good to pass up. Yet this excitement is based on nothing substantial. There's no real sense of scarcity or exclusivity, just the illusion of one. The prices aren't there to communicate the actual worth of an object, they exist to manipulate your perception, keeping you in the cycle of impulsive consumption. What's disturbing is how effectively this strategy divorces you from any rational evaluation of the product itself. You don't think about where it was made, under what conditions, or whether it will last. You aren't encouraged to ask why it's so cheap, nor are you supposed to. The entire transaction is designed to prevent you from questioning the real value behind the price tag. The experience becomes about feeling like you're constantly winning, securing deals in a distorted marketplace where the rules of value no longer apply. And in this way, Temu exemplifies the ultimate collapse of meaning in consumerism. Price, once an indicator of value, has become a tool for manipulation, detached from any real-world grounding. It's almost like the point of every element of the business is to confuse and stimulate so much that you're practically unable to make a good choice. I think it's interesting because a lot of these prophetic postmodern philosophers and thinkers predicted that the way consumerism of the future would go would be to increasingly appeal more to our ideals and wants to self-actualize. So a sort of higher purpose or intellectual appeal even. But in reality, it seems that the forefronts of consumerism, that is Temu, Wish, and Amazon, are proving that we actually don't need to appeal to this higher level of thinking and sophistication. We're regressing to only needing the bare minimum to be convinced of something. Like all the shit content on short-form platforms prove. It's this nightmare of the low-quality world that we live in, where we're all aware of the fact that it's a low-quality world we live in, and yet it's like we can't look away, or decide not to take part in it. And I think it's important to push back against the tendency in Western media to paint Temu or similar platforms as a uniquely Chinese problem. Yes, the platform's ability to offer such low prices is undeniably linked to its location and connections that companies like Amazon simply don't have. China, after all, is at the forefront of global manufacturing, advertising, and consumerism, exemplified well by the phenomenon of live stream selling. But to frame this as something sinister or uniquely evil simply because it originates in China is missing the point entirely. If Jeff Bezos or other Western tech giants could replicate the Temu model, they absolutely would. And this isn't about one company or country exploiting the system. It's about a global economic structure that prioritizes efficiency, profit, and growth at all cost. Criticizing Temu or China more broadly for excelling in this system is misguided. They're just playing the game that's been set up, and they happen to be exceptionally good at it. It's insidious and disturbing that platforms and technologies are so adept at manipulating our impulses, but this is the logical outcome of the economic and technological systems that we've built. The global marketplace is designed to optimize consumption, efficiency, and profit, and Temu is simply a highly effective player in this environment. Pointing fingers at individual actors or countries distract from the bigger issue, which is why are we, as societies, comfortable with structures that enable and encourage this kind of business? The real problem lies in the systems that we've allowed to flourish, where consumption is maximized, products are cheapened, and people are reduced to passive consumers driven by impulse. We should be questioning why this type of model that's designed to exploit psychological triggers and encourage mindless consumption is so normalized, instead of villainizing Temu or China for thriving in this framework. We should be asking ourselves why we accept a system like this in the first place. Yeah,